Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome on behalf of the Observer Research Foundation to the inaugural session of the Digital Pivot to Asia. This is part of our ongoing platforms and conversations about internet governance and cybersecurity. And I'm sure, as you all know, we host a very big cyber conference in October called Sci-Fi, which you'll hear more about in the course of the session. But just to get you started, a few ground rules for the next 1 hour. May I please request you to turn your cell phones off or keep them on silent. For those of you who are tweeting, the hashtag is ORF ICANN. And now I invite Malvika to fill you in on the rest of the details of the session. Have a good afternoon.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Malvika Jain, and basically, today's conference on the digital pivot to Asia has been organized by CNBC TV 18 in partnership with the organizers, Observers Research Foundation. And as you all know, the internet has become a critical resource for governments, businesses, and individuals. But it is interesting that there is very limited awareness of the manner in which the internet is governed, and thus this conference today. And as you know, that since India is a growing economy and one of the fastest growing internet user markets across the world, India's approach towards internet governance is going to be critical and will impact the manner in which countries around the world will look at this issue of internet governance. I'd now like to call upon Sunjoy Joshi to make a welcome address, please.
Thank you, Malvika. Honorable Minister, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, Mr. Fadi, Samir, on behalf of ORF and CNBC TV 18, let me extend a very warm welcome to all the distinguished delegates here at this lunchtime session with the Honorable Minister, which we are hosting. I particularly want to welcome the Honorable Minister, who, as we all know, has come to inaugurate this event in the midst of a very hectic and heated Parliament session. Sir, you've always been a great supporter of ORF. We've always looked up to you for guidance, so thank you for being here particularly. See, even as a digital pivot shifts to Asia, and that is what we are gathered here to discuss today, this government, in its vision of digital India, sees in the digital medium the one mode that can, by multiplying opportunities, become the platform that unifies and equalizes all across the country. And that is the thrust which the minister in particular has been giving to this program. For the Digital India Initiative is one that seeks to leverage the power of technology for governance on a scale that has not been imagined anywhere else in the world. Now, it plans to do so by connecting 1 billion people and reach out to them in order to deliver tangible social services, health, education, financial inclusion, you name it, it is all there. Now, in this vision of Digital India, which is to be a stepping stone to building an all-encompassing and inclusive governance model for India, you, sir, as Mr. IT, have been playing the key role in enunciating the framework for the desired models of digital governance and the way they're going to take shape in this country. And then moving on, I would like to thank Mr. Fadi, the CEO of ICANN. ICANN, as you all know, the proverbial post office of the internet, which is the repository of the key resources and capacities which allow the medium to function, which allow it to exist. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and being here with us for this interaction. You all know the ICANN itself today is at a critical juncture, and Mr. Fadi is here to talk to us about the transformation taking place within the organization and in the system of internet governance to create more inclusive frameworks enriched by the expectations, by the aspirations of not only the newly connected emerging economies, but the next billion in Asia, Africa, across the world waiting to be connected. The ORF has been engaged on issues of internet governance. It has hosted some of the core debates regarding the systems and protocols for the stability and security of the digital medium. We have regarded it as absolutely central to India's growth and prosperity. And as India seeks to transform itself into a digital and knowledge economy, it also seeks to become a committed and engaged actor that helps shape frameworks for global governance. So as we continue to debate issues related to the democratic and international management of the critical resources of the internet, contested issues like sovereignty, jurisdiction, issues relevant to the creation and sustenance of institutional structures, all based on the premise, fundamental premise of equity, keep coming up for debate in our various fora that we keep on hosting. And in this context, in April this year, we will be partnering the Hague Institute for Global Justice to host a day-long side event at the Kingdom of Netherlands Global Conference on Cyberspace. Our whole effort has been to support the participation of voices from the emerging world and particularly from the neighborhood of India. Later in May in New York, we will be hosting another event with the World Economic Forum on the future of the internet. And finally, later this year, one event which now everyone in India looks forward to, which is Sci-Fi is around the corner. This is India's largest annual internet policy forum, where we hope to debate particularly in this Sci-Fi 2015, developments vis-a-vis the looming transition of the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, the INA functions contract with ICANN. And these are debates which are taking place across the world. For finally, this is the medium absolutely vital in the effort to mainstream millions yet excluded from the dominant narrative of India's rise. It is indispensable for the leapfrogging that India aims for, the giant leap which aims to provide governance and critical services to those for whom a digital India is the best means for overcoming the legacy of disadvantages that have arisen due to the lag in hard connectivity. So given this context, this event, the Digital Pivot to Asia, is an important milestone in our constant effort to sensitize more and more people to the Indian debate and to bring global debates to the Indian audiences. So welcome once again. I look forward to rich presentations, compelling debates, and each of your continued engagement with our digital initiatives. Over to you, Malvika.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. I'd now like to call upon Fadi Chehade, the President and Chief Executive Officer of ICANN, which is a not-for-profit public benefit corporation with participants from all over the world dedicated to keeping the internet secure, stable, and interoperable. Please welcome Fadi.
Your Excellency, Minister Prasad, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to the ORF for this wonderful welcome here to India. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I am Fadi with ICANN, the organization that everyone seems to be talking about this year, even though our original plan was to be doing our work in the background without a lot of fanfare. But here we are in the middle of the picture this year. Now, I'm going to be very candid and direct. As you can see, to the chagrin of my team, I never read speeches. So I'm just going to speak to you straight from the mind and the heart about why I'm here today. First of all, India is central to what the internet is on a global level. I know everyone speaks about digital India, but digital world without digital India simply loses its digital label. India is not simply getting into the digital world. India is already an incumbent, a driver in the digital world, in every sense of the word. Indian minds, Indian companies, Indian engineers permeate every fabric of this digital economy, here and overseas. Therefore, I'm not coming to India to open up any part of Indian thinking to the importance of India's role on the global level. I am coming to celebrate what India has done to bring us to this point. And this is important because I came to India in October of 2013. And I know you're all living here, so I'll speak to you as an outsider. But since October 2013, India's place on the global scene has taken a new energy that is remarkable. To those of us on the outside, we watch, frankly, with sincere awe as how India's energy is changing. Own officials that I met recently, and I told them that personally at a meeting in Singapore, even the individuals I've been dealing with come with a new spirit, a spirit of can-do, a spirit of can-change. And it is with that that I come back to India, with the same energy that I felt from the outside. I'm coming to share with you the readiness that we all feel for India to not just be a power in the digital economy, but a superpower. And what's the difference between a power and a superpower? A power plays a key role in shaping how an important part of the global space is run and managed. A superpower makes sure that this power, called the internet, is going in the right direction. That it's shaping how this digital economy will look like, not tomorrow, but in 10 years. Because the next billion people that will shape the internet will not come from Omaha. They will come from here. You will shape the future of the internet. And therefore, as a superpower, you're not only in the car that is driving the digital economy, you're deciding where that car is heading and how the roads that are built for these cars look like. Now, ICANN is one of the institutions, one of many, that is participating in shaping that direction. Many of these institutions have been born in America with a very US-centric pedigree. And that's only natural because a lot of these things started there. But when I came to India in October 2013, your leaders told me unequivocally that India's role can no longer be just to be in the car, driving this forward. India is a leader, is an incumbent leader, and therefore we need to have our say. And therefore, in October 2013, the US government was still driving much of where ICANN was heading because of its historical role. ICANN has a contract with the US government. I operate many of the core components of what I do under that contract. And your leaders told me in no uncertain terms when I came in October 2013 that this is not sustainable. And we are a friend of America. And we share the same principles as the democratic world out there. Therefore, it is not a question of principles. It is a question of fairness. The internet is growing. I just heard from His Excellency, you passed 300 million users in this country. And probably reaching the 500 note not too far from now, at the speed you're going. I heard you're adding 7 million people on the internet monthly. Nobody can match these numbers today in a democratic, open society like yours. And therefore, I left India in October 2013. And I also had just visited with President Rousseff in Brazil. And with your wind in my sail, I went back to the US and discussed with US leaders that the model of US oversight of my institution is simply not sustainable. And I'm happy that you all know by now that a few months later, on March 14th of 2014, the White House, with support from the White House and the various US agencies, including the State Department, the US government announced that after 17 years of oversight of ICANN since our inception, they intend to end that regime. What does that mean? It means the responsibility is now on us. It is our responsibility. It means each one of us here in a country that is driving much of what the internet will be must be at the table, must be driving that. And India has all the capacities, and more importantly, the moral and principled ground to be at the top table of this. Now is the moment of India, not just on every front your leader has made clear, His Excellency Prime Minister Modi, but also in how the digital economy is governed. This year, the digital economy will reach $4.2 trillion in the G20 economies. This is a quarter of the economy of the United States. Just the digital economy. And I'm not speaking about the internet's effect on every other part of the economy, just the digital economy. Now, who is driving much of that digital economy? Back to India. Back to India. Indian minds, Indian businesses, and India's leadership. I invite you today, and the reason I'm here, to fill your due role, not just for digital India, because the internet is not just around national borders. The internet is a global resource, but it is also a national resource. And we need to find a balanced approach to govern the internet that respects the national boundaries and at the same time respects the fact that the internet is transnational. Who best to define this balanced approach than the country that shares the principles of openness, of inclusivity, of participation, of diversity, of multilingualism, and at the same time is a democratic powerhouse? I will finish by telling you an analogy. I come from a country that has deep roots like yours. Egypt is a country with many layers of history and roots, many of which are linked to your great country. And we have in Egypt and in Africa a river called the Nile River. The Nile River, like many of your great rivers, links the people of Africa. But it's not just a river. All you have to do is look at a satellite image of Egypt to know that without the Nile, Egypt will be brown. There will be no life. The internet is now an unstoppable force, just like a river. And how do we govern an unstoppable force? Do we dam it and stop it? No. Can it be centrally governed? Can all of Africa centrally govern the Nile? Impossible. A powerful river is managed through a series of loosely coupled but well-coordinated mechanisms. Dams, bridges, tunnels, rules, agreements that make the river serve all the people. And the internet needs the same thing. It needs a polycentric model, a distributed model of governance, where we all participate, respecting the force of this river, because it is unstoppable and it will change everything. It will change everything. It's like fire and water Anything they touch changes. But we have to manage the change, because we cannot have the wild river overcome our lands and overcome our people. We have to manage it together. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fadi. Internet indeed is an unstoppable force. I'd now like to call upon a man who needs no introduction. He's a noted parliamentarian. In the past, he has served as the Minister for Coal and Mines, for Information Broadcasting, for Law and Justice. Ladies and gentlemen, please join your hands to welcome Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, the Minister for Communications and IT.
Mr. Fadi, Sunjoy, Joshi, Samir, Malvika, distinguished member of Lok Sabha, Shashi Tharoor, ladies and gentlemen. First, Mr. Fadi, thanks a lot for the good words you have used for my country. Let me begin at the very outset by making a very candid comment. India, after 26th of May 2014, is a different country. Not in the traditional sense, but as far as the work culture is concerned. As far as ideas are concerned and as far as the implementation of ideas are concerned. That's what we are trying to develop in a very defined roadmap. What is the current India scene, if I reflect upon internet? As you rightly stated, when the internet service provider told me that we have surpassed 300 million internet connectivity, I didn't believe it. Because the second was more important. We have overtaken America and we are second to China. In the coming 2 years, we'll become 500 million. Maybe we'll be adding almost 10 million every month. We have got 900 million mobile phones in India. Very soon it will become 100 million, 1,000 million, 1 billion. The smartphones have got the biggest consumption in the world after America, in India only. And yes, the great engineers, scientists, researchers have brought laurels and wonders for India in the field of internet. India became a great outsourcing destination. Why? Because the internet was available without walls or barriers. Today, all the leading world internet companies are having their back-end offices in India. India is becoming a big powerhouse in the field of internet, in as much as I just saw in the newspaper today itself, Morgan Stanley has confirmed in a latest research that by February, in the last 13 months, 4.5 billion US dollars were invested only in internet business in India. That's what India is about. Indians have a great propensity to incorporate, to adapt and enjoy technology. And the success of mobile phone, the success of internet connectivity is an example of that. How common people, poor people are using internet, the various app applications on the mobile phone for their business activities too well known. This e-commerce is rising in India in a phenomenal way. And one of my personal staff told me that one of the e-commerce providers is known as Bania.com. Then I was surprised. And then in Mumbai, it is working very well. It only caters to the grocery needs of a small middle-class people. And he had made almost doing wonderfully. What is Digital India? Digital India is basically designed to bridge the divide between digitally haves and digitally have-nots. To plug the gap between digitally empowered and those who are not empowered. to build a bridge between digitally literate and those who are not digitally literate. I will not call them illiterate. This is indeed very important to be appreciated. And therefore, I always say digital India is more for the poor, for the underprivileged, than for the affluent. It is going to be a game-changer exercise with three clear components. Erection of a digital architecture as a utility for citizens. Number two, digital delivery of services. And number three, digital empowerment. And with that in mind, we have started a very big game-changing exercise of linking all the 250,000 Gram Panchayats of India by broadband within a time frame of coming 3 years. We laid down 1 million kilometers of broadband in 30 years. We propose to lay 700,000 kilometers of broadband in 3 years. That's the idea we have in mind. I'm very happy to tell you today that drawing upon my previous experience as an INB minister, I said, please involve cable also in this broadband delivery. And I was very excited to note that a lot of cable operators have come forward to deliver broadband in urban areas by tweaking of technology. This National Optical Fiber Network is going to be a neutral platform, non-discriminatory. Anyone can plug in and give services in the field of e-health, e-education, e-commerce, e-entertainment. That's what it is about. And with Indians' passion for technology and entrepreneurship, as I always say, in the field of internet, India has created some of the biggest icons of our time who are respected. I need not take any name, but you know most of their names. And we salute their enterprise and intellectual creativity, which has led to creation of wealth, brand India, also giving of jobs. When I see Mr. Fadi, it's very important to be noted. When India came on the internet stage, 3 questions were asked of Indian companies. Can you do it? Can you give a quality product? Can you give a product in time? And can you compete? These were the 4 questions always thrown at Indian companies. But I salute the Indian internet companies that they gave a fitting reply to all these questions of doubt by their sheer quality of work in time, and they became business leaders in the world. Therefore, internet operations in business has changed the very image of brand India. We are promoting electronic manufacturing in a very big way. I had said, Samir, earlier also in some of your forums, that we in India consume electronic worth $100 billion every year, all imported from outside largely. It is likely to become $400 billion by the year 2020 with all the duty component surpassing the fuel component. This cannot go like this. And therefore, we have re-energized the entire area of electronic manufacturing by giving incentive, MSIPs, promoting the idea of electronic clusters. I took CMs on board. The CMs agree that for laying fibers, we have to give the right of way free. I talked to Chandrababu Naidu, the CM of Andhra Pradesh. I told him, can you make a change in building bylaws? He said, what? If it is mandatory to have a provision for sewer, a provision for energy, make it mandatory to have a duct for optical fiber. Okay, mandatory. He got excited. He's going to do that. I'm going to write to all the chief ministers to follow that model. He said, you are coming to the Gram Panchayat, which we call the cluster of villages. I want to go beyond. I said, go ahead. That model can also be replicated in many other states if it becomes successful. Therefore, National Optical Fiber Network program, Digital India program is ideology neutral, is politics neutral. is center state neutral. We have to work together. Because, as I always say, this is what we owe to India. This is what we owe to Indians. And the Prime Minister's very catching words are always this: IT plus IT is equal to IT. What does it mean? India's talent plus information technology is equal to India tomorrow. That we say and that we believe very, very clearly and categorically. So this is the larger architecture of digital India, which we are pursuing and which we are quite sure that it will be completed in time. Maybe some hiccups there, but we'll have to address that, and we are engaging that. With this background in mind, yes, Mr. Fadi, India is an important player on the international stage of internet governance. I'm happy that USA has decided that the entire oversight mechanism must end by September or by the year end. What shall be the future architecture? We are discussing, we are debating. A lot of inputs are coming. Since it is in a stage of evolution, I will have to await my final call on this. But certain general observations I can surely make. What are those general observations? One, it must be equitable, must be effective. Because internet is one of the finest creations of human mind, but it cannot become the prerogative of the few. And if the internet has to become global, it must have a link with the local. That is how I see it. But yes, it has to be effective, available. The second is, no one can claim of early arrival advantage. What someone has very poetically called the tyranny of incumbents. Okay? Yes, you are there, we salute you, but now it is a property of the world. Therefore, you cannot claim a preeminence only because you arrived early. Thirdly, it must be open. It must be interoperable. That is not to be compromised. When we talk of open internet, in India we are very clear, we fully support the freedom of speech and expression. We have under Article 19 of the Constitution, the freedom of speech is the fundamental right, subject to reasonable restrictions like security, public order, and lot of things, which is also a part of fundamental right. Therefore, internet access, the way social media is working in India, our Prime Minister has one of the biggest following on social media in the world, that we promote. But having said that, there is one issue I would like to flag. Question of security is equally important. We in India are suffering a lot of threat of terrorism, of extremism. And internet, being a finest creation of human mind, is also being abused by few to foment trouble, communal hatred, terrorism. Surely, the state will have some role there. Therefore, any future architecture must recognize this role of the state. Because that is an obligation or a duty we owe to the citizens of the country for security, to make their life secure. Because we always remember, freedom can exist only when it is a secure atmosphere. Next is the issue of technology. Yes, technology agnostic should be the regime. Anyone cannot claim to be a monopoly over technology. That, and as I said, it should not be interoperable as well. Then comes the question of jurisdiction. Who will be the boss as far as jurisdiction is concerned? That's the question which keeps on troubling us. I think you need to consider it positively, that the jurisdiction should not also become a monopoly of the few. The world is different. The world is expanding. People of the world are increasingly claiming to have a stake over this fine creation of human mind, namely the internet, connectivities. Ladies and gentlemen, how we ensure connectivity? Let me give you just one example. We launched a program, MyGov, after we came to power. where we asked the people to give their advice to, on issue of governance, on Ganga cleaning, on environment, on financial inclusion. In a week's time, we received 700,000 suggestions. Many of them we acted upon. We just started a financial inclusion program, but because we believe, Mr. Fadi, that digital inclusion is important for financial inclusion. Both go hand in hand. We just started a program, Jan Dhan Yojana, People's Money Program. Jan Dhan is Hindi. This Jan Dhan was advised by them on this MyGov program. Can you believe, with the same machinery, we opened up 120 million bank accounts in 4 months of poor people. Those who were not having any access to the banks. You have a mobile phone, fine. You don't need to give any precondition. The moment you open the account, a 5,000 rupee RuPay card will be available, plus a rupees 1 lakh of insurance cover, 100,000, and 30,000 rupees for accident cover. Ladies and gentlemen, there was no obligation to deposit any money by these poor people. And one who is beyond the bank access is bound to be poor. But they deposited 10 rupee, 20 rupee, 50 rupees. And in those accounts, we had 2 billion rupees in those 4 months. 12,000 crores. $2 billion, 12,000 crores by poor people. Once you make digital inclusion a part of financial inclusion, this happens. Therefore, we are very clear that this equality, this openness has to be maintained. Lastly will come the question, what shall be the nature of architecture? Surely that is a question of detail, but 2 points I must say, it must be broad-based. It must be global in character. This I need to flag. What shall be the other part of the architecture? The nitty-gritty part, we are also discussing, you are also discussing, we will finalize. But it has to be broad-based, it has to be global. If these issues are taken into all detail, there is one last issue I would like to flag. Internet highway should not be elitist. I hope I mean what I am saying. This is my personal view. Because I always say, internet gateway must be available to all. If there is enough broadband available, maybe some technological innovation can be considered as an option. But this gateway is a gateway for all. And all means every people of the world, every citizen of the world must be able to enjoy it uninterrupted manner. I always say, Shashi plays with his mobile phone quite frequently, replying to all the SMSs and all the ideas which keeps on troubling him. I tried to copy him, I failed. Because ultimately the ideas came on coming so much, that I said, all right, I will do it not frequently, but yes, I engage, I do engage. And one of the finest experience of mine, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you. I had gone to Cochin in Kerala. There my party president told me how India is changing. I want to share in conclusion. That a young girl, Anamika, wants to meet me along with the parents. She came to meet me. She said, I always watch you on television. I am your great fan. I watch you on Times Now with Aruna Goswami. I ignore even cartoon shows for that. I hugged her, got a photograph of mine, put it on my Facebook. Within a week's time, ladies and gentlemen, and I said, met young Anamika, and put a good words about her. 1 million people liked it in a week's time, the highest on my Facebook on one entry. I had about 48,000 comments, and one comment was indeed telling, I want to share with you. Anamika did not miss cartoon show because Aruna Goswami show on Times Now is a cartoon show even otherwise. That's India. Come on, enjoy it. The changing face of India. Engagement, empowerment, involvement. And therefore, In India, just for digital inclusion, I have asked my officers, we are just going to finalize BPOs for small towns of India, small cities of India. When I say digital inclusion empowerment, my benchmark is in the lowliest of the village of scheduled caste, which we'll call Mahadalit. I want to see a Mahadalit woman running a community service center, digitally literate, giving digital services. And one of my officers is monitoring that program. I'm very happy that about 150 the Mahadalit women and Dalit women have been digitally trained. 2 of them have started common service centers. That's the whole idea. Yes, Mr. Fadi, let me say in conclusion, India is an exciting country. An internet experience in India is going to be further exciting. Surely the world can emulate. Thanks a lot. Namaskar.
Well, thank you, Mr. Prasad. If we could take a few questions now. You did mention about digital inclusion and how the government is moving forward to provide internet for all. At the outset, I'd like to congratulate you for having launched the Digital India mission. And also, I noted the point that while there is a pressing need for clarity on the issue of internet governance, that's a matter of detail and the government is working on it. But what prompts me, and it's a question that is on everybody's mind, recently Sunil Bharti Mittal said that if you want to offer free internet, then do philanthropy. So basically, what kind of role can we expect the government to play in this regard when it comes to providing internet for all?
I'm very happy to learn that Malavika, after all, didn't ask me a question on the spectrum today, okay? Which she keeps on chasing. You know, what we are doing with broadband, this whole broadband connectivity to 250,000 gram panchayats of India is basically funded by the government. We are creating the space for that. And once it is there, a lot of business proposition will come about. I don't want to comment on any particular comment made by anyone. I always say, when we talked of digital inclusion, I simply mean the digital gateway should be available to all. If the broadband penetration is good, if this effectiveness is good, its effectiveness should be available for all. That's what I mean by digital inclusion. And the government can play a role of facilitator. Having said that, I also added, if availability of broadband's effectiveness gives some scope for some technology, we can consider that an option. But for me, when I say of digital inclusion, we should not create a further category, a subcategory of digital super haves and digital super have nots. That's what I meant.
Well, sir, if we are going to be moving towards digital inclusion, internet governance will be a key component, and that's something that people are not even aware of. What kind of impact do you think that US net neutrality rules will have on India's story when it comes to internet governance and growth of digital India?
First, if people do not know much about it, you are also to be blamed. It is your job to tell the people as to what things are as a leading journalist. That's what we are doing. That's what this whole program is about today. As I say, there is a big transition underway as far as internet governance is concerned. Some of the issues Mr. Fadi flagged, some of them I flagged. We need to engage more. I am willing to have feedback from you also, from Samir, from Sunjoy. Because architecture, namely controlled by the USA and as an oversight of monitoring, is going to end by September. A new architecture has to come. The entire internet scenario in the country and the world has almost metamorphosed in the coming 5-10 years. And as Mr. Fadi rightly pointed out, whenever we come with a future architecture, we need to take into account the kind of future challenges, future opportunities, future difficulties. All these things will have to be. But yes, my broad benchmark is very clear. It has to be broad-based. It has to be global. And surely, countries like India must be expected to play a role. A country of 1 billion plus people, a country giving such a big service to the entire, using internet for welfare and development, which we are. If you ask my view, I would expect, thankful Mr. Fade, let Digital India program, after its success, becomes a program and beacon for the world as to how to be replicated. So this is how I think any future arrangement of internet governance must be thought of.
Well, Fadi, Mr. Prasad mentioned that internet governance needs to be broad-based, and you had mentioned in your speech that all of internet cannot be centrally governed. You also said that India needs to be one of the drivers and leaders when it comes to internet governance. What do you think is holding India back? Because this is not a current debate that we are talking about.
Thank you, Malvika. I don't think India is held back by any external factor or any particular reason. I think traditionally, the institutions that govern the internet started and were spawned by the country that energized the creation of this platform, the USA. And that's only 20 years ago. I mean, in our history, India or Egypt, that's a blip. But in internet time, that's a long time. But the time has come now when the internet affects every fabric of our social lives, of our economy, of our politics, of the world, of how people in the world see us as well. That India should take its place at the table. Now, ICANN, for example, is one of these institutions. There's also the IETF, which is more for the engineers. There is the W3C, which is more for the content. Now, this is important that you appreciate that as there are many institutions that govern the internet, it is important for India to map its participation across these institutions, which is not always easy. It takes a little bit of planning, a little bit of work, to understand how each of these institutions is involved, what is their role, who makes the decisions, how will India participate in the decision-making process. For my part, at ICANN, I felt, frankly, that without having people here on the ground to work with you as a community, not just government, because your government has been well engaged with ICANN, but also the business community, the civil society, all of you need to be engaged. So we move now to have Samiran, who's with us here, I hope many of you can meet him, who is now on the ground working with you to bring you into these institutions. It is very important you participate. ICANN has no membership fees, no requirement for people to pass anything. All our doors are entirely open. It's upon us to take charge. I want to, with all due respect, correct something His Excellency said. He said that India, should participate or is invited to participate in our fora. I would like to say that India must participate because without you, we are not able to say that our table is complete. It is impossible for me to say that ICANN, I'll speak for my organization, is a global organization if India is not at the table in a very prominent way, commensurate with who India is. And it's easy for me to say this here because, as I said at the podium, we share the same principles. Your country and the internet community share the same principles. The doors are open. It's now time. We are here to help put the on-ramps for you. So let's get on board and let's drive this.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Well, sir, the table is not complete without India's presence, and India needs to map its position when it comes to internet governance and the entire digital economy that we are talking about. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Prasad, that Narendra Modi at a recent NASSCOM event had spoken about cybersecurity and how that was an emerging market when it comes to India, and Indian companies can actually create a niche role for themselves. Where do you think India can position itself? The cybersecurity policy that India had developed particularly deals with the manner in which Indian government looks at cybersecurity, but not necessarily provides an overarching architecture for various companies and stakeholders to engage with each other.
First of all, just to reply to what Mr. Fade said, when I say we must be called, we should be called, I only say recognize our role as an important player in the international community. Okay, that's what, and I also said Digital India program can be replicated by others after its success. That's how I see, yes, as the Minister of IT and Communication, I would like India's role to be recognized and respected. India is certainly an integral part of the high table. What's wrong with that? Now, secondly, as far as your question, Malvika, is concerned, what the Prime Minister said is, cyber security requires to be given greater attention. And if I can use the words of the Prime Minister, soon we will have 1 billion mobile phones in India. We must tell the users of mobile phone it is security compliant fully, lest they may not run away by touching the mobile itself. It has become too much of problem and vulnerability on security issue. Surely, many problems of technology can be answered by technology. We have problems of cyber security, we have threats, we have abuses, we have terrorism, we have rank abuse. This whole ISIS movement is what? Technology driven in many ways. Therefore, what can we do to contain those? The technology has to find a reply. And what the Prime Minister said rightly, for which I always reiterate, that in India, this huge internet market, with 1 billion plus mobile phone going to rise and rise, there is need for greater security applications. For that, the operators can do the R&D, research. We have already decided by the cabinet approval to have one for 10,000 crores. How much it comes in dollars? Any idea? $1.5 billion for Electronic Development Research Fund, Angel Fund, Government of India will be involved for research, for R&D. So we are doing that. But cyber security is an area which requires to have greater thirst.
Well, sir, my conversation with you cannot be complete without asking you a question on spectrum. The spectrum auctions are presently underway, and the government has received bids exceeding 86,000 crore rupees as on date, and the bidding is continuing. There are skeptics who actually say the manner in which the auction is designed and the prices are spiking, it is actually counterproductive to the government's Digital India mission.
First of all, let me tell you clearly and categorically, spectrum auction is going on. The government is having arm's length. A professional auctioneer is doing it. It will not be fair for the minister to speak a word about, and I don't wish to. One. Second, about the second part of your query, I have always said some of the operators would have been happy if we would have given them a spectrum for a fee, for a free. Okay? But world over, there is a price for a spectrum. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your
You
kind
will
words,
not
sir.
leave me without a question on a spectrum.
No, I would never do that, sir. Now we could take a few questions from the audience. Sir, just one or two maybe? Just one question? Please introduce yourself before you ask the question.
My name is DC Pathak. When we talk of internet governance, I suppose it includes arrangements that address security concerns at a certain level. Mention was made of this by the minister in passing. Now, beyond the sovereignty of a nation, and we know how sovereignty helps if the gateways are located in your jurisdiction, I think the cause of internet governance would be helped if the parameters of friendship between two friendly countries are established beyond, with a certain amount of clarity. Now take Indo-US relations. Now we have pitched it at a level where we are prepared to share intelligence and security between these two countries. And therefore, my question for Mr. Fadi is that does he perceive a further movement on the part of the US where any flow of information from the internet world will be shared with a friend if it is of mutual concern, because this become a requirement after the Snowden episode.
Thank you for the question. Let me first clarify that from my perspective at the ICANN level, we are not managing any content. So just to be clear, that ICANN's responsibility is in what we call the logical layer of the internet. Roughly speaking, the internet has 4 layers that need to be governed. The bottom is the infrastructure layer. These are the networks. These are largely run by private investors and institutions. the count is closer to 100,000 in the world today. So there is no internet at that level. There's just 100,000 different networks. The next layer above that is the layer we're responsible for. It's called the logical layer. That's when we make these 100,000 networks look like the internet. Not content related. All we do is manage the domain name system and the IP numbers that are needing to be coordinated so that any phone or any device that speaks to the internet is unique on the internet. That's what ICANN does, and our role stops there. The next layer is really the content layer. That's where there's a lot of information that is flowing, applications, etc. And of course, then there is the social layer. We stopped at the layer, and in my layer, no content. ICANN has no content on what happens to the internet. My sole responsibility is to ensure that every device or everything soon, because your plants and your shoes will soon talk to the internet, has a unique number. That's my first job. And so it all looks like one internet. And the second job being, of course, the names, the domain names of the internet. Now, I'm not going to evade the question you asked, but now that I set the context, you're asking if at the content layer or any other layer, one government is collecting information, should they be sharing that information with other governments? Or should they be ensuring that what they see, other governments, friendly governments can see in order for them to coordinate activities? I think that happens today already. But this is a very good example of something that can be settled between governments, with government relationships. It has nothing to do with the institutions that are multi-stakeholder, like ICANN, where we manage a different layer. My sense is, as we move forward, that governments will continue to be challenged by the fact that the internet is borderless. I go to ministers in some countries who tell me, Fadi, I receive 2, 3, 4, 500 court orders per month to shut down sites, and none of these sites are in my country. What do I do?
Same is my problem.
Yes. What do we do? And we feel, frankly, we don't know what to do. We're frustrated. President Hollande of France, after the Charlie Hebdo episode, demanded that a whole number of sites be shut on the spot. Most of them were not in France. And somebody had to walk into the president and explain that his presidential decree is worthless, right?
Something hilarious I can tell you. This whole World Cup cricket match going on. One day, fine morning, we are confronted with a court order, block 52 sites, because they were illegally using the feed which has been won by the auctioneer for telecast of cricket rights. All were outside India. We were absolutely taken aback. These problems keep on coming.
Yeah, and what do we do is the question now, right? And again, this is beyond ICANN, but I'm just answering your question out of respect for its importance and for you. It is very important that governments, operators of these networks, ICANN and others cooperate together to address these issues. And the problem of the internet is its speed. So unlike climate, if we pollute in Karachi, it takes it a few days to get to New Delhi. But if you pollute the internet in Cairo, it gets to Los Angeles before you blink. The speed of the internet is challenging all of us. And therefore, we need mechanisms to manage the internet that are as fast as the internet. And these mechanisms have not been well devised in the content and social layer yet, but they need to be. And they need to be involving all stakeholders, and I hope we get there in the couple of years ahead.
Well, thank you, Fadi. Thank you, Mr. Prasad. You've been a wonderful audience. I'm sorry, we've really run out of time. We won't be able to ask.
Last question.
Sir, actually, the problem is we are not sharing the digital infrastructure. For example, we are not sharing our optical network. We are our 4G.
What is the question?
We are not sharing the infrastructure. So we should have a law that we should be sharing our infrastructure. For example, we should be sharing our towers. So even one place, you have 10 or 20 towers. Within a few.
This is a local issue. A tower is not an issue of internet. Okay, thank you. Come to me. Thank you.
Well, I'd now like to hand over the mic to Sameer Saran to please make the closing remarks.
I'll just do it from here, sir, because you're in a hurry.
No, Go ahead.
No, I think what was remarkable in both your addresses was that I didn't hear once either the word multilateralism or the word multi-stakeholderism. And I think that is refreshing. What we heard were principles. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board and work around principles, the core principles that should, in a way, shape the future of the governance architecture at various levels. And I think that was remarkable. I think both the words are value-laden, interest-laden, and sometimes are the very basis of the contests we see around governance. So thank you both for not using those two words, as far as I'm concerned. I think there were also three remarkable similarities. I think both of you touched on the global and the local nature of internet, national boundaries and the transnational character. And I think any governance architecture has to straddle this duality of the medium. Both of you also mentioned quite a few times the word equity and effectiveness, and which in a sense tells us that it will be a distributed, diffused governance system if it has to be both equitable and effective. Centralization perhaps may not be the only way ahead, and you will have to think beyond. Mr. Prasad also actually did touch upon the fact that we have, in India, started taking many of these features of the digital economy down to the third tier of democracy, the Gram Panchayat. So in a sense, we are distributing the digital capacities to various layers of democracies, and being a loud and rather argumentative nation, civil society is always in the debate on internet. And I guess that is going to be, you guys better be ready for 1 billion more Indians when we start debating your policies. So that is my suggestion to you. Finally, let me just propose a vote of thanks. Thank you, Minister Prasad, for addressing us. You've always been a great pillar of support to ORF for over a decade now. We will continue to bother you. We will continue to pull you into our programs as we pursue our initiatives in the digital medium. And certainly, sir, best of luck with the auctions and best of luck with the Digital India mission. Fadi, thank you for accepting our invitation, for coming down. I think it is extremely vital if the I and ICANN is the representative of the Indian flavor that ICANN must imbibe. And we wish you best of luck with the transition process. And certainly, we hope to see a far greater integration between your institution and ORF.